Hey, well, good morning, Discovery. It's great to see you, great to be here, and I just want to welcome everybody. If you're new around here, my name is Rusty. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm just really honored to be with you. And if you're new at this church, you need to know that we are a collection of churches that kind of do life together, and that's a church in Valencia, and that's a church in Simi Valley. And last weekend, we opened a brand new campus in Canyon Country in the Santa Clarita Valley, and so can we just show our support for them online? That'd be great. And because of us being able to partner together, we've been able to plant churches in Thousand Oaks Reunion Church and Mission Church out in Ventura and Mission City Church up in Santa Barbara, and then another one up in San Luis Obispo just the other day. So it's just a really exciting time around here. And I don't know if you know this or not, but just a few weekends ago, Discovery Church went live streaming on Sunday morning. And so some of you travel on the weekends, or you've got travel ball on the weekends, and you find yourself unable to be here on a Sunday morning. Now you can watch live through the app or through watching on the website. And so can we just welcome everybody watching online right now? Good to have you with us as well. And what I've discovered is this is a great way for you to invite a friend, for them to check out our services around here. Even before they show up to the building, they can kind of get a feel for what it's like and what to wear and what things are going to be about. And so invite them to join online, and then they're going to show up eventually in person. We'd love to have them do that, and you do that as well. So really exciting stuff going on, from everything that Chris just mentioned, everything that's coming up. Good stuff. In fact, this is just my favorite time of year. I mean, you've got the holidays that are coming, but you've also got football has begun. Praise the Lord, it is back. We have high school football, college football, NFL. It's just a great, great season. And everything is good right now. It's cooling down. It was down to 101 yesterday, so we're loving life again. But there are some things that we're not so fond of. And as kind of a way for us to continue to get to know each other, I thought I'd share some things that hate's a strong word, but I really don't enjoy, okay? And so if you feel the same way as I do, when I put these images up on the screen, would you just applaud to the level you feel that way, okay? So here's the first one. This is going to seem trivial, but it's kind of a big deal. Stickers on fruit. Man, that drives me insane, okay? I know, go to a farmer's market, you don't deal with it, but it's a trouble enough for me to get to eat fruit eventually, other than a fruit roll-up. So when you have to peel that off, that's a big deal. Okay, I know, first world problems. Here's another one, and that is celery. I don't get it. Don't hand it to me. Don't act like I'm supposed to eat it. All it is it turns into floss. Okay, that's about all the good of celery. Okay, here's another one, and I can't look at the screen. I'm not a fan of clowns. They're always up to no good. Something's going to go wrong. And I know people keep coming up to me going, oh, but you got to see it. It's so good. Listen, that's not going to help my fear of clowns, all right? I don't need to see that or the second one or read the book or anything like that. So don't ask me to do that. Now, here's another one that we'll put up. This is the spider. Oh, that's such a nasty picture of them. Now, I know there are people that say, oh, let the spiders live because they take care of all your bugs around the house. It is a bug, okay? It's just enabling it, and I don't want to do that. And so a few years ago, my wife and I were getting ready for bed, and I'm, walking over to get in bed, and I turn the lights off, and I look up on the ceiling, and there, right above the bed, on the ceiling, is this huge spider. And I thought, I'm not going to sleep with that thing looking at me, okay? So I got to do something about this. So I get a shoe, I get up on the bed, I'm jumping around. I finally hit the thing, but I don't kill it. It just falls. Now I've angered it, and I can't find it, all right? I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the house. So I'm freaking out about this because I heard this stat, and I've never forgotten about it. I don't know if you know this or not, but the average human being eats 8 spiders a year, and they never know it. Because you're sleeping and they just crawl in your mouth, okay? Yeah, you heard it here first, so there you go. So I'm just thinking this is gonna be number 8 or 9. I don't know where we are on the, what time of year it is, but anyway, I was able to go to sleep eventually, and when I woke up in the morning, I opened my eyes, and laying right there on the pillow was that spider. Oh, I'm just kidding about that. All right, so But that's what I kept thinking. I kept waking up all night. Where's the spider? Where's the spider? You know, and when I get to heaven, I got a lot of questions for God. But number one is, where'd that spider go? Did I eat it? You know, so I don't know if spiders bother you. They definitely bother me. Now, let me give you a couple that really tie into what we're talking about today. And that's this, weeds. Okay, now I don't know if you do a lot of gardening, but the weeds drive me crazy. And I don't do a lot of gardening. Thank you very much, okay? Because they just slowly overtake. And you don't even plant them. They're not even there by your choice. You know, if you have a bare patch of ground and you plant grass seed, you get grass. You plant nothing, you get weeds. I don't even know if you can buy a bag of weed seed, you know? I know you can buy a bag of weed, but that's a whole nother deal. And I think that's medicinal now. But anyway, the weeds, they're overtaking. And you can have a pathway, you can have a driveway, and the weeds just find their way into your life, right? And that's kind of true inside the house. But inside the house, it's not weeds. It looks like this. It's clutter. That's almost as scary as clowns, right? Some of you think, what's the problem? That looks pretty good to me, all right? Some of us are a little bit more OCD. We're kind of freaking out about that right now. I don't know if you've seen the show Hoarders, or if you are a hoarder, or you live with a hoarder, but you know when somebody just can't let go of things. Now, my wife is not a hoarder, but she likes to collect things, and then they end up out in the garage. And so we have this ongoing battle of she'll buy something, she'll keep it, she'll move it to the garage. I'll say, do we still want this? Yeah, we'll need that someday. And I wait. I wait a certain amount of time until she's no longer thinking about it, no longer talking about it. And it seems like we've never used it. And then I'll slowly move it out to the trash can and put it out there because I hate this kind of thing and I like to get rid of it. And inevitably, the moment it's gone in the trash, what does she say? Hey, where is that thing that I was looking, you know? And then I do what the rest of you guys do. I pretend like I didn't hear her. You know, that's the way you do it. So I'm teasing, obviously, but I really don't like clutter. And some of you, maybe it doesn't bother you. All right, now, here's why I say about the weeds and the clutter. Because this is what it looks like in our lives. It looks like a packed calendar. And for some of you, you look at this calendar and you kind of break out into a sweat a little bit thinking, ooh, that's too much to do. And some of you think, that looks like fun. You're the person that says yes to everything. You're the person that thinks we can find a way. Let's just put it on the calendar. Let's just say yes. Let's just do it. It'll be good for all of us just to stay busy and stay out of trouble, right? Well, the problem is, for many of us, we fill up our calendar full of stuff that really doesn't take us where we want to go, and inevitably it becomes the weeds in our life or the clutter in our life and never allows us to be the kind of people that we were really designed to be. And so through this series, what we want to do is we just want to talk about how to get good at being busy. Because the reality you and I face is we're going to be busy. I mean, we keep saying that it's just a busy season, but guess what? We're always in that season. We keep saying things will settle down, but guess what? They never settle down. So why don't we just learn how to be good at being busy so we can do this a little bit better? Now, last week, we kicked everything off by talking about how we could learn this one phrase that could change our attitude about being busy. And that is the phrase, enough for now. Even gave you a prayer to pray throughout the week. Through you, God, I have enough for today. And this whole idea is I have enough for now, I am enough for now, it's good enough for now, and just allow us to be able to hit the pause on adding and adding and adding so much stuff to our lives so we can just take a breather. Well, later that day, last Sunday afternoon, I got a message from somebody from one of our churches on Instagram, and they just wanted to let me know how they've been practicing this principle of saying enough and how it's impacting their home. And he said, today my wife asked me to help her clean the house, and I said, it's clean enough. She asked if she could buy some expensive shoes. I said, we have spent enough. She got mad and said, that's not what the service was about. And I told her I'd heard enough. So just helping marriages one at a time. That's what we're here to do. Now, maybe you're still learning how to practice that one, and that's good. That's a great place to start. I have enough, I am enough, it's good enough for now. But what I want to talk about in week 2, as we kind of dive into this a little bit further, is if we're going to be busy, how could we be busy on purpose? And that may sound like it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, and I'm going to take the next few minutes to try to explain this and hopefully convince you. But I think that it's okay to be busy as long as we're busy on purpose and figure out the right way to do that. Now, it just so happens that we talk a lot about this guy by the name of Paul, and we call him the Apostle Paul because he was pretty brilliant. But this was a guy that lived in the first century who was a type A kind of personality, a high D on the DISC assessment, probably a 1 on the Enneagram, just a perfectionist. And he just went after everything. And when he became a Christ follower, he put all of his attention towards that. He's planted all these churches and found himself in prison writing letters to people. And during these times, he would talk about what it really means to manage your time wisely. Now, you would think in the first century when they didn't have smartphones or, the internet or some of the calendar challenges we have today or social media, that time would not be an issue back then. But he says, no, it was an issue back then, and it was an issue for the people he was writing. And so he writes this letter to a collection of Christ followers to help them get their mind around the issue of time. Take a look at what he says in this one letter. He says, I want you to be very careful then how you live. And notice what he says here. He doesn't say the difference between right and wrong or good and bad, but rather not as unwise, but as wise. In other words, there are things about your schedule and your life that aren't necessarily wrong. They're not necessarily bad. They're just not wise. It's just not wise to add another thing. It's just not wise to add another commitment. It's just not wise to put this into our lives. And he says, I don't want you to be unwise. I want you to be wise. Making the most of every opportunity. In other words, carpe diem, right? You seize the day. You make the most of every single opportunity, not just a few, not just once in a while. Why is that, Paul? Because the days are evil. Now, when I say that word evil, you might think of something like, Stranger Things or Halloween's coming up or maybe clowns, okay? That is evil. But when I'm talking about evil, he's talking about this whole idea of our days left to themselves are driven to disorder. Our world is driven to disorder. Our culture is driven to disorder. And you left to yourself, your default will be disorder. Whether that's too much or whether that's not enough. There's something in your life that just drifts towards disorder. He says the days, they're evil. And so he says, I want you to not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. In other words, his purpose for your life. You see, what Paul is leading us to think about at this time is this idea that your life could be lived on purpose, but it's this whole idea of pacing yourself that really, really matters. Now, for anybody that likes to run, good for you, God bless, that's not me, but for those of you that like to run, you know that there's something about pacing that matters. Because if you just start out on a sprint, you may not last very long. If you see a hill coming, you've got to conserve energy to be able to make it up that hill. You've got to pace yourself along the way. And what Paul would be saying is, you've got to pace yourself when it comes to your life. And you have to pace being on purpose. Now, some of you think, I know what my purpose is. It's to be a dad that provides or a mom that nurtures or to be a career person or succeed in this area or to be a faithful friend. Those are all great things. But you're not necessarily pacing on purpose. And what Paul will go on to tell us is that if your life is a race, which we talked about last week, and how, it's kind of like this NASCAR race. It's just going around and around and around. And I know I offended some of you by taking a shot at NASCAR. I'm sorry. It's just an easy joke, all right? So just around and around and around, seeing the same thing over and over every time. He says, I want you to have some pace to your purpose. And so Paul will tell another collection of followers of Jesus how they're supposed to visualize their life. Take a look at what he writes in this passage. He says, don't you realize that in a race everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize, so run to win. Now, they were very athletic back then, and this is pretty much the culture in which we get the Olympic Games from, and so they understood what it meant to compete. And he says, we've all been to races before. We've seen people race, and when they race, they all run to win, To which everyone in this audience will be listening to this going, yep, that's exactly right. He takes it a little bit further. He says, you know what? All athletes are disciplined in their training. In other words, they work very hard just to win this one race. They train themselves, they eat properly, they practice. And certainly those of you that have high school football players know this. Some of you that are high school football players, you know you were doing two-a-days during the heat of summer in order to prepare for the football season. Professional athletes will hire personal chefs and people to help them work out in order to be the best of their ability. He says, everybody does this who's in some kind of athletic competition. And then he turns the conversation. Look what he says next. And they do it to win a prize. And by the way, that prize will fade away. Think about that for just a second. The trophies, they tarnish. Every year we read about somebody who won a Super Bowl ring and now they're auctioning it off because they just need a little bit of money. Every year we see some of our treasured giants from the past, like Joe Namath doing an insurance commercial, right? And we're like, seriously? And we see these people we once held up as these great warriors of whatever it was, business or sports or just life, and we see their trophies begin to fade just a little bit. Think about this in the terms of politics. I mean, the vice president is one heartbeat away from the most powerful person in the world. Most of us couldn't name 5 of them. I mean, think about this in terms of a president. They hold an office where they are the most powerful person in the world, and eventually we forget about them. I saw this in glaring form a few years ago. I was at a LA Clippers game, and I was at this game, and obviously it's a Clippers home game, and people there are excited about the Clippers and everything, and they introduced everybody, and it was time now for the national anthem. So we all stand up, and when the national anthem was done, and it just so happened to be the very day that President Gerald Ford had passed away earlier that day. Now, whether you liked him or you didn't, or you remember him or you were alive, you take a moment to remember the president. And so the PA announcer said, we're going to take a moment of silence to remember President Gerald Ford. Put a picture of him up on the screen. And we all sat there silently in honor of a former president. And it was during that moment of silence, somebody in Staples Center yells out, "The Candyman sucks!" What does that even mean, right? And then a little bit of laughter begins to pour throughout the arena. And then I remembered. Years ago, the LA Clippers had drafted, with their first pick in the draft, a guy by the name of Michael Olowokandi, a.k.a. the Candyman. And let's just say he was less than awesome. And they eventually traded him away. And the team that he was now on was the visiting team in the arena. And he was standing at the end of the bench. And during the moment of silence for the former president of the United States, this guy decides to take issue with the Candyman. And I thought in this moment, first of all, I started laughing. And second of all, I thought, here's a moment we're remembering the highest position in the land and in the world. And it's become a joke in somebody else's life. Our positions we chase after are gone like that. Our trophies we chase after are gone like that. And most of the time we are so busy pursuing something that just won't last. And so Paul says this: I want you to pursue something that's eternal. Take a look at the next slide. Okay, so what the next slide would say is something profound, okay? What Paul will go on to say is I want you to pursue something that's eternal, an eternal prize that won't fade away. And now this slide will not fade away. It's with us, okay? What Paul continues to say, and I'll just read it to you because it actually is brilliant because it's from Paul and not from me. It says, I want you to run for an eternal prize. and to do so in such a way that you run to win. And when you and I are running to win for an eternal prize, we are not doing so against somebody else. You are not racing against the person seated next to you or against me or anybody else. You are simply racing to win. What does winning look like? It's completing the race that God has for you. In other words, and this is how he concludes it, I run with purpose in every step. I am not just shadow boxing. You may know what shadow boxing is? You're basically just boxing against nobody in order to look at your form through your shadows. The only thing you can do through shadow boxing is practice your form. You don't really get any better at boxing other than just making sure your form is okay. In fact, it's very exhausting because you have nothing to kind of bounce off of as you're hitting things. It's just kind of an exercise. And Paul is saying, I'm not just exercising for no reason. In fact, he says, I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. In other words, there are things about my life that my default says I'm just going to drift into selfishness and all about me and doing what feels good, but I will discipline myself not to so I can live out my purpose in life. I'll say no to some things, I'll say yes to some other things so I can discipline myself to live out my purpose in life. And here's what Paul is saying to you and to me. Do not let your life get so full of weeds, so full of clutter, that you can't fulfill your purpose. Can I just go ahead and tell you what your purpose is? You might think, well, how would I know that? I can tell you what it is because I know what you value in your kids. Your purpose is to help other people. This is why when your kids are selfish, you call them on it. That's selfish, that's spoiled, that's entitled. I want you to look out for your sister. I want you to take care of your friend. I want you to be kind to them because you know the value in somebody looking out for somebody else. And you know the shallowness of somebody being consumed with themselves. And guess what? That's your purpose as well. In fact, Jesus was once asked, what's the most important thing we can do? And Jesus said, I'll give you two things, love God and love people. A year and a half later, he made it even simpler for us, even clearer for us. And he said, I'll tell you one command for every single one of you, and that is to love other people the way that I have loved you. How have you loved us, Jesus? And they knew it already. He left heaven, walk amongst us, heal us, forgive us, die for us, resurrect to give us eternal life. He said, I want you to forgive people like I've forgiven you. I want you to love people the way that I've loved you. I want you to empower other people the way that I've empowered you. That is your purpose in life. And for those of you that think, I'm not even sure what I believe about Jesus, think for just a second. Wouldn't you say your life would be better at this point if you had practiced that? Don't you think your marriage would be better right now if you had practiced that in your last argument? Don't you think your relationship with your kids would be even healthier if you had practiced that with them? Don't you wish you had taught your kids this when they were growing up? Don't you think that you would have less shame and less guilt and less regrets if you had just decided to love others the way that Jesus had loved you? In fact, this whole thing of following Jesus, I believe it is the best way to live, but you can try it without buying. You can kind of belong around here before you believe and just begin to see what it's like to live with that purpose, because that is the purpose that you and I have, to love others the way that Jesus has loved us. Now, let me just hit a timeout right here. Because some of you are thinking, yeah, that's your purpose, you're a pastor, but I'm an electrician, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a homemaker, or I'm a student. And let me just tell you this. You're confusing your purpose with your path. Your purpose with your path. You see, there's some distinct differences between our purpose and our path. For one, our purpose never changes. The reason you were created was to take care of other people. The reason you and I exist is to love others the way that Jesus has loved us. But our path is unique. Your path may be an electrician. Your path may be a homemaker or a teacher or an athlete or a student. Your purpose stays the same, but your path can often change. This is why it's so difficult for some of us when our kids leave home. Not just because of the empty nest sensation, but because we think, I don't know what I do now. Because my purpose was to be their chauffeur. My purpose was to be their parent. My purpose was to be their biggest fan. And now that they're gone, I don't know who I am. You've confused your purpose with your path. Your path was to be their chauffeur. Your path was to manage their calendar. Your path was to parent them, and now it will change. This is why some of us really can't figure things out after we retire or we lose a job, because we think that was our purpose. But it wasn't our purpose, it was just our path. Our path was to have that job for a period of time. Our path was to have that career for the amount of time that we had it. And now that we're retired, we still have our purpose, even though our path has changed. In other words, your purpose tells you your why, but your path tells you your who and your how. Every season of life that you are in, you and I are able to live out our purpose regardless of our path. Here's the question you and I have to ask, and that is, are the slides back? The answer is, yes, they are. Your purpose is the why and the what, your path is the how. Can we just show some appreciation for our tech team? Technology's great till it isn't, okay? Your purpose is the why and the what, your path is the how. Now, here's the issue that you and I have to wrestle with, and that is this one basic question or statement, and that is, your path must serve your purpose. Now think that through for just a second. Some of us get so busy with life, the whole idea of going to church seems like, I don't have time for that. Suddenly now, your path has overtaken your purpose. Some of us are so busy with life, the idea of joining a community group, the idea of serving anybody in our community, can't even fit that in our schedule. Our path, so full of weeds, it's overtaken our purpose. Your purpose is something you can do anywhere. Your path is just where you live it out. Several weeks ago, my wife and I were in a store and we were making a purchase, and I was so focused on my path, I'd totally forgotten about my purpose. And I was not really loving people the way that Jesus loves me. I was annoyed by people. People were in the way. I was focused on my job, even though I was with my wife shopping. I was on my phone. I was answering texts. I was answering emails. I was making plans. I was brainstorming things, trying to solve problems. And she's trying to talk to me, and I'm, yeah. And I'm, still working. And we get up to the counter, and we're paying for this stuff. And the person behind the counter is a really nice girl talking to both of us, and I'm not engaged at all. And my wife gives me that look. You know what I'm talking about. The look that says a lot of things, but no words are spoken. And I look at her, and she gives me that look, and I give her the look back like, I'm not being rude. And she gives me the look back like, yes, you are. And so then finally, I put my phone down. I talk to the lady behind the counter. I say, hey, how are you? We talk for a moment. And then she looks at me before we leave, and she says, Pastor, I'll see you on Sunday. Good to see you. You got it. Fantastic. And then my wife, it's just, kerosene for my wife. She's like, oh, I told you, see? And in that moment, my path had overtaken my purpose. And I think this is why some of us are so busy, because we're so consumed with making sure that the path is great, we forget the purpose. We suddenly get consumed about what everybody else thinks, and we forget our purpose. When our purpose was with us before we chose that path, and it will be with us after that path is gone. So let me ask you this question. This is kind of your homework for the week. How is your path impacting or fulfilling your purpose. Because for most of us, our path is so full of weeds and clutter, we don't even think about treating people like Jesus has treated us. You don't even have to carve out a lot of stuff of your schedule. You could just use every moment that you're in to be Jesus to them. Whether it's your neighbors, whether it's the other parents on the soccer team, whether it is other people at the school, whether it's people in your own family. Most of us have let our path overtake our purpose. And what Paul is saying, that is what you're driven to. That is your default. That is what you will just kind of drift into. I want you to use your path to fulfill your purpose, not think that your path is your purpose. Your path will come and go. Your path will change. As life goes on, your path will not stay the same, but your purpose is always the same. And what Paul is saying here is, you know what losing is? Losing is not somebody being better than you. Losing is not somebody else beating you. Losing is you not fulfilling your purpose. And your purpose in life is to love people in your life the way that Jesus has loved you. And when we're so busy, when we're consumed with all of the stuff, the weeds overtake the path. And it confuses us from our purpose. So we want to be a place that helps you live this out. And over the course of this next week, if you're in a community group, we want to challenge you to meet with that community group and go through a few questions about how to live this out. And if you're not in a community group, you can use these questions and talk this out with a group of people. Maybe you watch it together online, or you have them watch it and you talk about it over lunch. But here's just a few questions to walk through. What is the biggest time waster you face? This will be an easy one and a lot of fun to discuss. Here's the second one. What pace are you at right now in your life? 5 miles an hour, 50, or 100? And let your spouse answer this for you. That'll be a lot of fun as well. Make for a good car ride home. Okay, 3. What is the most difficult thing about living out John 13:34? That was that verse where Jesus says, I want you to love others the way that I have loved you. And then number 4 is this. How are your purpose and your path unique? And talk about the differences as we begin to kind of separate that in our mind. And finally, this one. Is your path currently serving your purpose? And if not, what will you do this week to correct it? You see, it's not enough just to kind of show up, hear some words, and go home. We want to live this out. We want transformation to begin. And the way we get good at being busy is we do this together. So last week we learned, I have enough for now. This week, how is your path fulfilling your purpose? And next week, we'll talk about part 3 of getting good at being busy. Let me pray for you. God, I thank you for your amazing love and concern for us. And that you recognize our schedules and our craziness, and a lot of times it's just chasing after things that you already provided for us. Your unconditional love and acceptance and grace and mercy. God, we want to be people that really focus on that purpose in life, whatever path we may take. God, for some of us, our path is so cluttered right now, we don't even have breathing room to fulfill our purpose. Some of us need to declutter a little bit or pick some weeds this week. God, for a lot of us, we just need to refocus on what our purpose really is. We got consumed thinking it was our path. So would you guide our thoughts and even our conversations this week as we talk about this with each other? We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.